Okay, hello everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to today's event, Rock the Ballot, a voter information and ballot fill out party. Right now, we need the wah, 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 wah. I'm about to say we're calling it a party, but there's no music, but we're gonna have a good time. But my name is Christian Brown. I'm one of today's co-moderators of our event today, and I'm a journalism professor at Cerritos College. I'm also a member of Falcons Rising. Quick plug, this is the second event of the semester that we've hosted, and Falcons Rising is a faculty-driven committee that was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement. So it aims to facilitate some meaningful conversations, substantive reforms around issues that address matters of racial equity and students. And so you may notice over the course of the rest of this semester and even going into the spring that there'll be some Falcons Rising events. So just know that it's faculty members like us that want to have these types of informed conversations about things. So at our last event in September, we had actually a screening of a Netflix film, Audible, and a Q&A with the star of the movie. And that movie explores the life through the lens of a Black high school football player and his friends that attend the school, Maryland School for the Deaf. And so it's actually about these students who are part of the deaf community and what their life is like in athletics. And so we actually had a Q&A, and I'm going to drop the link to that in the chat. So here's the YouTube link. So if you didn't catch the last event we did about the students of color in the deaf community, you could check that out. And then, oh yeah, we'll just put our website also into the chat. So please check us out and follow us for future events that we'll be having. So today, as we've already mentioned a little bit, we're going to be focusing our attention on the 2022 midterm elections. I'm sure all of us have been unable to avoid all of the advertisements and the emails. I get emails from people every day about this election. That we're a little more than a week away from what a lot of the experts expect this to be a huge turnout election nationwide in the aftermath of COVID, January 6th, there's a war in Ukraine, rising prices with inflation, Roe v. Wade got struck down. There's just so much aftermath to this era we're living in. So the people want to come out and make their voices heard. So we're going to focus, though, a little bit closer to home. So we're going to be focusing on the various propositions that are on the ballot this year, the measures, local measures, some of the local races that are happening. And we're also going to talk about their funding sources. So that's something that we sometimes always don't know. So we're going to focus and see who's actually given the money toward these different props. So we're not here, just want to make this clear at the top, we're not here to tell you how to vote on these different measures. So we're not necessarily here to give you our personal opinions about them, but really just kind of telling you what these races are about, what a yes vote looks like, what a no vote on some of this looks like. And some of you may be voting for the very first time. Actually, I'm kind of curious about that. If you're voting for the first time, maybe can I get you to put a 1 in the chat? Put a 1 in the chat. If this is your first time voting, put something in. Oh, look at all these votes. We got some fresh voters. Woo!
I'm guessing two burritos counts.
Yeah, I see some burritos, so I guess that that means it's your first time voting and you hungry for some Chipotle. But okay, we got a lot of first time voters then, so awesome. So we want to help you all and let you know what's going on with these propositions. So, all right, let me go ahead and introduce my co-moderator, and I can let him have some words. But I'm joined today by GianCarlo Aguilar, who is responsible for putting this amazing presentation together that you're going to see. He's also one of my dearest friends in the whole wide world. And so I'm so happy to have him here today with us. And it's like bring your homie to work day. But do you want to say more about yourself, GianCarlo?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is GianCarlo. I am currently staying in a NorCal area, Sonoma County. I'm living out in the woods. We could get into that later if you want to know. But yeah, I originally grew up in SoCal, and that's where I'm predominantly kind of bouncing between Riverside County and LA County. And yeah, it's a pleasure to have been working on this to try to help take all of this information and kind of synthesize it to be a little bit more accessible. We're not going to cover everything because everyone's ballot might look slightly different as you're kind of living in different parts of LA County or SoCal, but we'll try to cover things that are pretty popular or like hot topics, if you will, and maybe more like interesting toss-up races. So we'll kind of get into that. Really quick for everyone on this page, you see a QR code. If you want to scan that, you could have access immediately to the PDF for this presentation. We're also going to have it at the end as well for people who might show up late, but there are going to be links throughout or more toward the end of the presentation that you could kind of see what we're referencing and stuff like that. And we'll put some links in the chat as well. But yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I could think of no better person when I was like, okay, who can help the students here at Cerritos walk through this? And I'm like, okay, it's gotta be GianCarlo. So so glad that he said yes. Now we're gonna also be so fortunate to have one of our own political science professors on campus join us today. Dennis Falcon is gonna be here to help answer some questions too. He's also the president of the Faculty Senate, so he's well acquainted with local LA County politics, and so he's gonna kind of be our expert today. I don't think he's joined us yet, but we'll just kind of keep our eye on those popping in. Oh, actually, I think I do see Dennis. Dennis, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Just in time. I was just introducing you and saying that you'll be our resident expert today. So,
Oh no.
yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
I mean, we're gonna give a lot of information, but with all of your knowledge, we're like, okay, maybe he can give some additional commentary on some of these races. But thank you everybody for being here, taking your time to be here. For those of you who are in the room, we want you to participate in the conversation as well. So of course, feel free to utilize the chat to drop in comments or questions that you have throughout today's conversation. And so please feel free. Now I know we're not really here to debate necessarily all of these issues. So so mostly we're just here to talk about what they're asking us to vote on. But good stuff. As GianCarlo said earlier, you can scan this QR code if you want a copy of this PDF, this presentation we're going through. All right, next slide. Okay, now I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit, Dennis. But before we go into talking about all of the voter information and some of these props and measures, I did think it'd be interesting to take a pause and just talk about what's the importance of voting. And I kind of wanted to pose that question to you, Dennis. Like, why does this even matter? I know some people say, hey, we've been voting for years, nothing changes, everything's still the same. We still have all these problems. I'm not gonna vote. But what would you say to counter that? Why is it important for our students here to care about this election?
Well, first, just to remind everybody, resident expert or not, I'm still just me, and the opinions I am about to share do not represent those of Cerritos. No, I'm kidding. I could do a disclaimer thing right there. But no, this is obviously, I've been doing this for a really long time. I see other people in the meeting that they have to in one capacity or another. And it's like one of the most eternal questions, like why or why not or whatever, right? And just so you know, I have taken a very different approach to this in my classes over the years to some extent or another. and it might surprise many of the people in the room. I always put voting in a broader context related to just participation, political engagement, political involvement. And by doing that, and by highlighting the other forms of political participation, and even from a historical point of view, you know, I'm really trying to put voting into a reasonable context so that it doesn't have what some might call, what I might think is like an elevated form of recognition for participation. Because don't forget, I know very few people here probably would forget this, but like, for example, like everything that we're hearing about elections being rigged or stolen in relation to the Trump candidacy. One of the things that I've tried to point out to my students since that is that elections in the United States have always been rigged. Elections in the United States have always been fixed. We have never had free and fair elections in the United States. And so whatever example you want to look at historically, whether it was the exclusion from the franchise of even white men who didn't own property, or women, or Native people, and just keep going down the list historically, and all the challenges that we faced in terms of expanding the franchise, right? That's one context. And so even now, with the most current attempts to quote unquote fix elections through gerrymandering, making it harder for people to vote in different states by having new, restrictions and requirements, trying to basically reduce the voting pool, and primarily based on, race and other factors. But that's just that, because elections, if you look at it, they only take place like once every 2 years or 4 years, whatever the election cycle is, primary elections notwithstanding. Elections occur over time, like on a calendar. Whereas we know for sure that there are forces or interests that are involved in the political process in the United States at every level that take place every day, like lobbying, people contacting elected officials, organizations raising money, donating money, people buying ads, people getting petitions signed. So the political process takes place every single day around us, and elections only punctuate that, like I said, every 2 or 4 years. So in that context, the people who use the political system to the greatest advantage in our society, these are people who know full well that they don't even need to vote. Like a corporation, for example, that can't vote. We all know the power that corporations have in our political system, and they don't vote. So in that context, when voting ever comes up with my students, of course, I'll encourage them to vote if it's something that they have an inclination to do. Of course, there are reasons to vote, in particular races, like say the sheriff's race in LA County, or for some proposition. Of course, there are reasons to vote for these. But I'd like to have it in that context. So you vote on Tuesday, but what are you going to do on Wednesday, right? You don't just put your political hat away and wait till the next election. I mean, so that context to me gives us a much more robust conversation to have. And again, it doesn't discredit voting. It just puts it into a particular place on our radar. So I hope that helps to at least get some of the conversation going.
No, I love that, seeing voting as a part of a broader patchwork of participation that we all should be doing as Americans. Because to your point, the corporations, they sing it as a multi-faced, operation. It's not just one thing they're doing to influence the system.
Right.
And
it never ends for them. Exactly.
No, that's wonderful. I love how you frame that. Thank you. I think that definitely kicks us off on this conversation for sure. Thinking of it in that way. Okay, let's see, next slide. I think we're going to talk a little bit about, how to vote. So Juan, do you want to talk about this part?
Yeah, so I know we mentioned that we're not going to tell you how to vote, but we're going to rather show you how to vote. So the registration, the common or average, not average, the regular registration has already passed. However, that doesn't mean you still can't vote. You are able to register in person at a local polling station. That will be a conditional voter registration. And you could also submit your ballot between now and election day by mail. I'm going to put right now in the chat some of the links to everyone. I hope that goes through. Okay, let me copy that again. But so what I'm going to be sending in the chat right now is a way for you to check your voter registration, early voting locations. So you could put your address in and see where you could drop off your ballot if you preferred that instead of leaving it in the post office. Your local polling locations for the day of, and then I'm also going to be providing more, what do you call it? Information on the conditional voter registration. So let's see if I could get that there right now. But yeah, all that to say is that if you have not registered to vote, or you know people who haven't registered, it's not too late. You can still participate in this upcoming election. Okay, there are the links for that.
And
I think that's all I have.
I see a question
go
in chat about one on campus, and to my knowledge, Cerritos College is one of the voting centers. And so you can vote here on our campus or drop off your ballot here if you'd like to do that, yes. All right, good. Next slide.
One thing I'll note too is that we will be having more of those links that I put in the chat at the end of the presentation with like references and links. So if you don't catch it now, we'll have that available on the PDF regularly.
Okay, let's get into these propositions. I know you've seen the ads, especially for 26 and 27. There's been so many advertisements for those two. So we're going to get to those in a minute and try kind of break those down. But let's start with, I guess I'll turn to you maybe a little bit first, Dennis. Just again, we asked earlier how many people was this their first time voting, and it was almost the majority of the room. So just a general question, what is a proposition? What is that? What is, it seems like there's a process for the things to get on the ballot and then we're able to vote for laws in California?
Yeah, that's relatively simple. Initiatives or propositions exist not in every state in the union. Not all 50 states have the proposition or initiative process. In California, the proposition initiative process, I'm going to use those terms like it's interchangeable or use them together, like combined, right? The proposition or initiative. We're basically a result of what they would have called like a reform movement back in the early 1900s to try to break the logjam, gridlock that existed in state government and politics when we had the old political machines, very similar to those that exist, let's say in New York or Chicago, where you had, those traditional forces at play in the political system in the state that basically controlled the political process, the agenda, everything that got on the legislative agenda per se. And, this is that old, the image of the cigar smoke filled room with the power brokers basically calling the shots on what became law and what didn't become law. And so with the reform movement in the early 1900s in California, it was basically intended to break that and introduce what we would call direct democracy, direct political involvement by voters, so that you don't have to depend on or rely on the state legislature and bills being introduced in either the Assembly or the Senate or authored by the governor, for example. This is a way that citizens could practice a more direct form of democracy by themselves, either like think about it going over or going around the state legislature. and introducing legislation, new laws, et cetera, that might not otherwise see the light of day. And so, to varying success and reviews for the last 100 years, initiatives and propositions have played a huge role in the legal landscape of California. We just go back over some in recent years. Like, one of the ones that would come to mind is that how many attempts it took to get marijuana legalized in the state of California, and not just for medicinal purposes, but to get it legalized for recreational and personal use. That's all basic, not all, but it's basically because of the initiative process, where you just had voters, enough voters, critical mass, that were able to champion and move these pieces of legislation along and through the process. And for better or worse, like with anything else, anytime you introduce something new into any system or any process, I think in economics they might call it externalities or unintended consequences, so that the initiative process, for all the good that it creates, the possibility for it, it also introduced the possibility for abuse. And I think a lot of the things that we might look at today in terms of specific propositions, I think I'm looking, I see George's image. I don't know if he's there, but like, there's certain axioms in politics. And one of the first ones is always follow the money, right? Follow the money. And so when you think about the ads that we're seeing now for some of these propositions, like the ones you mentioned, look very closely, especially at the commercials at the end, when it tells you who paid for that commercial. And once you see who paid for that commercial, you can start to fill in the blanks yourself on who is this really serving and what are they trying to get.
Thank you. Yeah. No. Yeah. So it's like you said, there's pros and cons to these propositions. Probably expands democracy a little bit, helps more of us to have a voice in what goes on in Sacramento. But then again, like you said, folks can throw money at stuff, and maybe there's unintended consequences for some of these.
George Jerry wants to know why he's the follow the money guy. Because you're the history guy. Come on.
Yeah, please, George, if you have thoughts or comments along the way, please feel free to chime in. Okay, well, I guess let's.
Because money's one thing I don't have a lot of.
Oh. You're like, don't turn to me.
Well, we all out here trying to follow the money, right?
Right. You're like, I'm not the new prime minister of the UK. Anyway,
really
That's
quick though,
story.
I do want to add and to kind of disclaim on the information that we're going to see on the following propositions is that on the bottom of each slide, you will see as of October 22nd, the amount of money that was thrown either for or against either proposition. So we'll have like total amounts there. And underneath, you're going to see a list of names. Those names aren't the full comprehensive list. Those are more just like the top donors for that amount. But there, if you see the ellipsis, the ... that means there's going to be more people on that list. We will have at the end a link that actually shows you the breakdown of who contributed to what. So you could research that more later if you like.
Okay, cool. Well, let's start with the first one then. So you may notice on your ballot that you'll see proposition number 1. And so this guarantees abortion rights, but in the state constitution. So this is in response to the striking down of Roe v. Wade over the summer. The Supreme Court struck that down. So a lot of states are either moving to create abortion bans or to shore up their laws around abortion. And in this proposition, it would essentially enshrine abortion rights into our Constitution so that it would be a fundamental right for Californians to choose an abortion in our Constitution. So by voting yes, that's what you would be signifying, add this to the Constitution, and no would be, wouldn't take away our abortion rights, but it it wouldn't add it to our Constitution. Am I understanding that right? Did I describe that accurately?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. And then at the bottom here, GianCarlo, these are the folks who have contributed to the campaign.
Yeah, so these are some of the top contributors to a yes vote. Like I said, it's not a full comprehensive list, but these are some of the top ones. And there was no really campaign funding for opposing this measure. So, and I think that's another thing to keep in mind, that you might see in certain propositions where you'll only have money being used yes or no. But just, I would encourage people to, yeah, again, kind of like what Dennis and George have been saying, to kind of see who are the people who are putting money into that. Do they align generally with like what you kind of respond to and resonate with your own values and things like that? Yeah, anybody else want to add?
Yeah.
Dennis, or anyone have a question from the audience on this one?
I just don't want to talk too much.
Oh, no, your insights.
I'll say a couple things. Yeah, California has pretty strong protections for abortion. We similarly use a privacy, basically a privacy precedent in a law like set in the 60s that, similarly to Roe v. Wade, gave people the right to abortion under a privacy clause. And also California has a lot of laws restricting and limiting and maintaining when and what type of abortions, and kind of like regulating that medical procedure. And the reason I bring that up is because proponents, the language of this bill is like really small. It's not even a page. It's like not even a paragraph. It just puts it in the Constitution of California, specifically abortion and contraceptive rights. But because it's so vague, proponents think that it's going to, make people go all willy-nilly with abortion. In particular, like it will allow them to euthanize a child after birth up to the day of birth. And again, these are completely unsubstantiated claims, because California has additional protections surrounding abortion. We limit it at 24 weeks, viability. There's all kinds of other stuff. So those, if in case, so those kinds of things that the opposition are saying for this bill don't really have any legal standing. It's more just kind of fear mongering in that sense. But there's a lot to be said about pro-life and other stuff. So, there's definitely opinions to be had there. But their reasoning for no, at least the opposition, isn't really that strong.
Yeah, because I haven't seen a whole lot of advertisements really in favor or against this particular proposition. California being as Democratic leaning as it is, I suspect that this one might pass. But yeah.
And that probably, just that observation that you made right now is probably like one of the best observations that we could make, because depending on how much television you watch or how much internet and like Facebook or whatever because everybody advertises now on all these different platforms, right? It's not just TV and radio, obviously. But like, because of my work, I always have to have my radar on and my hat on and keep an eye on this stuff. And you're right, even in my estimation, there has not been a lot put out there in terms of, now maybe it'll hit a week before and they'll flood, $12 million of ad buys and everything else, just to make sure that they don't ruin it by not throwing money at it. We might see that a week from now. But because voting in California, with the early voting and everything else, the fact that we haven't seen it now is kind of saying they kind of see it as a given, that based on the states ideology, based on the state voting registration by Democrats, California being a quote unquote liberal state, it's going to pass, right? But just one thing to remember, anything that a proposition can give you, another proposition can take away. So when they say like to enshrine this in the state constitution, take that for what it's worth.
Very true.
Yeah, that's a helpful point.
Yeah. Now I see Selena has her hand up. Do you have a question, comment?
Yeah, so my question is, so for this one, if I were to, because I'm not saying I'm not against abortion, it's everyone's choice, it's a woman's body's choice. But would you say, if I'm not, I don't want them to take that choice away for women, would I say usually no or yes? Because that's where I'm getting confused.
So yeah, if you said no on it, abortion rights would still be legal in California. So this isn't necessarily saying, do you want abortion rights or not in California? It's mostly about where that's placed, So they want, right now it's not in our state constitution that a woman has a right to choose. So this would essentially be adding that to our state constitution to strengthen the abortion rights in the state. So it's like, do you want to go from abortion rights being safe or super safe? And so if you voted yes, it's like making it super safe. So it sounds to me, based on kind of what you said, that you would probably want to vote yes on this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. All right, great. Well, we can move on to the next one, I suppose. We'll get into, now these are the ones that, yeah, these are the ones where there's a fight going on in the state for sure over these propositions. And so do you want to read through this one, GianCarlo?
Yeah, I could talk a bit about this one. So Proposition 26 and 27, both of these talk about sports betting throughout the state of California. And so for 26, what this will do is we'll legalize sports betting at travel casinos and at horse racing tracks. So this would be an in-person practice that you could do. Right now, the only types of sports betting that is allowed in California is horse racing. So this would then legalize like football events and soccer and all that. It will also expand the types of games that could be played at travel casinos, like roulette and dice games. And one thing that I want to talk about, the potential use of the revenue from this, is it would help finance gambling regulation, education in the state, some mental health programs, and any money left over after that would be given or added to the California General Fund. So there's a lot on this, and when we get to the next one, we'll kind of see how these kind of like parallel and are focusing on different things. But yeah, here's are some of the numbers with who's been supporting this and who's been against it. On for the no, some of those are like those names listed there are companies, like sports betting companies, and the ones more on the left for the yes are like different tribal nations are really kind of supporting this. So yeah, that's just kind of like my overview on that one. Dennis or Charlie, do you have anything to add or ask?
No, this would, one of the simple ones that I would ask is, like, just in general, how many people like in this room right now, so to speak, have ever even been in a casino here in California? I'm not talking about Vegas. I'm talking about here in California. That means the tribal casinos or casinos like the Commerce Casino, the Bicycle Club. What was the one that the Flynn, the guy from the magazine, owns somewhere over like in Commerce or somewhere? I can't remember the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never been in any of those casinos. And like even then we had the Hawaiian Gardens one. Yeah, I'm not thinking about the Hawaiian. I'm thinking about the other one, the guy from that the porno magazine that got shot and was in a wheelchair. His company, Hustler. Yeah, I think they have a casino somewhere over by the airport. This battle is between those dogs. The dogs in this fight are those kinds of casinos. and the tribal casinos. That's the primary battle there, because like with anything else, this is a zero. They're seeing it as a zero-sum game, that a gain for one is a loss necessarily for the other. And so that's why you see the amount of money that is in this one right now. And so, like, I don't know about everybody else, but for me, I'm looking at this one and I'm thinking, I don't even know how it affects me, to be honest with you. Because all the things that they say they're going to do with the money, like it going into the general fund, any money that's left over. If you know anything about the state budget, that's like, okay, what is that? You know, so this is one of those interesting ones, but I'd be interested to see what other people have to say about it.
Well, the thing about the general fund in California is that, okay, so 70% of the revenues from this proposition and whatever this comes forward, 70% of those revenues go to the general fund. And the general fund is, I believe, 40% of that. California law mandates that 40% of the general fund goes to education. So it does affect us. It literally gives us money, but in a more indirect way. Probably none of us here gamble, most likely, and that's how it's broken. It's like 70% goes to the general fund, 15 gambling, addiction, and mental health programs, and 15% goes to enforce gambling, betting, sports betting and gambling enforcement. But that's a huge chunk that goes to the general fund, which there's another bill that is, I think, Prop 31, that wants to add that 40% that goes to education. They want to add 1 more percent to that, that is directly only for arts and crafts and like other arts, not arts and crafts, but other arts programs and arts education that got cut during COVID, which usually is the first stuff to get cut, is those. So they're going to increase that instead of 40, we're going to have now 41% of our general fund for California will go directly to schools. And so this money could help alleviate that, because there are proponents against that go, well, if we have a recession, then that's 41% solid. That means we're going to have to cut funding from something else, like health or whatever, you know, some other sector in California. But this money does go to us. The other proposition, Prop 27, that's none of that goes to us. That's 85% of that goes to homeless and housing, and 15% goes to, I think, non-gambling tribes. So we get zero of that money. But this, at the very least, how much they are prospecting, I don't know how many billions they're prospecting out of that, possibly maybe 1 or 2, but it does go to us.
Yeah, I guess my only comments on this particular one is that it does seem to be, as Dennis said, only a handful of these casinos and racetracks will be able to do this. So this doesn't necessarily open it up to all of them to do sports betting there. They still have to work with the state to try to figure it out. So, yeah, I mean, do you want it on site, you know, for folks to be able to do sports betting at these casinos? I think someone said most of us probably aren't doing some of this form of gambling. So 27 is going to be online gambling. So that's probably going to involve more of us perhaps than this one.
Yeah, at the risk of, again, coming off as like not what you would expect, like counterintuitive kind of thing. For years, I've told students and family members and friends that, because, you know, I'm an old guy, lived through a lot of elections. I've been telling people for years, when it comes to the propositions and even candidates, if you don't know enough, it's okay not to vote for it. You don't have to vote for every single thing on a ballot. Because if you really don't know, I mean, don't vote. Leave, skip it, and go to one that you think you have a better take on it. You have more information. Go to the ones that you feel better about, and don't just vote because you think you have to on something that you really don't understand. Because that to me doesn't make much sense, right? But so I'm just throwing that out there. And not that I'm going to skip this one. I don't know yet, but it's, to me, it's perfectly acceptable for people to do that.
Yeah. And we were going to mention that too at the end, you know, that if after all of this, you're still like, I don't know, it is totally fine to leave some of them blank. Or a lot of Californians, what they'll do is if they're not sure, they just vote no because they know that it'll keep the status quo the same. So, so if you're not sure, it's okay to just vote no or not vote at all. Okay, well, we can move on to 27. So just know 26 is sports betting at the racetrack, at the casino. And then 27, you want to go over it again, this one, GianCarlo?
Yeah, so 27 will allow online betting throughout the state. There are a few stipulations of what that could look like. So a licensed tribe would have to partner or kind of give permission in some ways to a gaming company in order for a gaming company to then offer online sports betting throughout the state. And some of the revenue for this, as mentioned before, would be going towards housing for unhoused people, and 15% would be going to native tribes that do not offer any kind of sports betting either partnership with themselves. I do want to slightly maybe reframe or push back a little bit, talking about how the money towards this, the revenue towards this proposition doesn't really go to us. I think I would kind of like to reframe that people who are unhoused are also part of our community, even though they might not be within the Zoom call or even maybe avid voters, but I do want to think of them as part of our community. So if something benefits a section of our community, I hope we could consider that benefiting the entirety of our community. So, but yeah, I think that's all my thoughts on Prop 27. Does anybody have anything else they would like to add to that?
Yeah, this is just going to be about, do you want this device that I hold in my hand to allow you to gamble from the comforts of your home? I think I saw Selena's comment earlier about kids being addicted. That would be this proposition 27. If you know, could happen, maybe not, but I guess it does open the door for some slippery slopes, perhaps, around gambling. But it could be very profitable, and as GianCarlo just said, could also offer money, perhaps financing for things. So
far as I know, I mean, you could literally do this right now in California already. So like I have buddies that have apps, you know, they have DraftKings, they use websites that are totally legit. There's just a battle as to far as, you know, who's getting that money, where is that money going? And so it's already something that is happening. So I wouldn't worry about kids getting addicted, but yeah, it is something to consider.
all right. Okay, we can move on to the next one then. So, all right, Proposition 28. So this is the one that Brian actually was referencing a little bit earlier. So this is a guaranteed funding for arts and music education. A yes vote on 28 means that you're going to require the state to allocate 1% of their general fund be used toward music and the arts education programs around the state. So more funds will be given to schools with students from lower income households as well. And so if you are in favor of that, looks like there's $10 million in support of this proposition coming from some teachers associations down here at the bottom. And looks like Fender Musical Instruments got involved in this one too. They're like,
You're
yes.
muted,
Like, we want more of you all to buy our instruments because the programs will persist, right? Will continue on. So a no vote means that the funding will stay the same. The funding will stay the same. But yeah, don't know if anyone else has comments on this one in particular.
Yeah, I think what I'll mention is that what was kind of talked about earlier, right now we have 40% of the general fund that is earmarked for just education. And so what this does is protects 1% of that to go towards arts and music education. And so kind of what we mentioned earlier is that usually when there's economic downturns, some of those programs tend to be cut first, but now this will kind of ensure that arts and music is just as important as we treat science and history and all these other kind of fields of education. And so something to just kind of think about that if that's something that resonates with you.
All right, we'll keep it moving. We got a lot to get through. I know we got about 30 minutes left here, so we gotta make it through this ballot. So this is Prop 29. This is the third time this type of proposition has come on to the California ballot. So if it looks familiar, or if you remember some types of discussions like this before, you do not have, it's not deja vu. We have had these conversations. So this will create new regulations for dialysis clinics that you may see as you drive around, clinics that specifically are for those patients. So a yes vote on this is going to require these clinics to have at least one healthcare provider on site. Typically a doctor is usually what they're looking for. It prohibits these clinics from closing, reducing services, and refusing treatment based on insurance type. And so you can see that the no would keep things the same, where they don't have to have some of these stipulations on them. And you can see who's funding it is a lot of these dialysis clinics. So the dialysis clinics are like, please don't make us have to do more than what we're already doing. They would argue that they feel they already have the adequate healthcare professionals and services on site needed to provide these dialysis services. And that if this passes, this would simply make their costs go up. And a lot of them feel like they would have to close down actually, and wouldn't be able to meet these requirements. So a no vote means things stay the same. Yes means that these other stipulations will be added to these clinics.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add in terms of the financing information on the bottom is this is the only slide that has all of the contributors to this. So between these 5 companies, they collectively contributed 86 million as of October 24th or something like that.
Natalie, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say, first of all, this is excellent information and an excellent discussion that we're having. But I just want to point out too on the yes, it would also, well, one thing that stood out to me is, again, it would prohibit clinics from reducing services and refusing treatment based on insurance type. So it looks like they would be forced to take people who need the service when perhaps there's some, perhaps now they're able to refuse services. So yeah, just a note.
Yeah, it is so funny because a lot of these, I think they have some elements that, are good, some elements that the services will say, we don't like, we do like this, we don't like that. So then it kind of ends up being a mixed bag. I don't remember, Dennis, how similar this is or different from the last time they had.
It's basically, it's a regurgitation of previous ones related to the same issue. And the ads, at least on television, the ads are basically the same ads, different people that they used before. This is if you see the ads, there's on the no side. This is a total use of fear, like fear mongering as their message, right? That if you vote yes, 80,000 people on dialysis might die. I mean, come on. That's pretty much what they're telling you to vote based on. It's horrible, but it also, they think that it works. Negative advertising, a lot of studies have showed for decades that negative advertising and advertising that focuses on fear, stoking fears, sadly, tends to be effective. So it's just a question of like, do they get enough of it out there this time as opposed to the previous ones, where they get the needle to move a little bit and they get it, and they get what they want. But just the ads themselves make me stop and wonder why I studied political science in the first place. But we'll stop there.
Oh gosh, and I could say to Natalie's point, if y'all had $86 million lying around that you could voting pay to oppose this prop, then you should be able to not refuse services to people. So yeah, so this is one of those where I could. My mother used to say some of these are like a gut, whatever. Go with your gut, on some of these sometimes. Yeah, Natalie. Oh, Natalie, did you have your hand back up?
Whoops, sorry, I didn't.
Oh.
I would have, I wanted to share that, yeah, I'm glad you added that point, and it would actually, it's not that we need it for this presentation, but it might be useful to know what are the current regulations, right? And if there's lack there, because also, to have a healthcare provider, you would think these things should be standard on at a dialysis site. But yeah, so just wanted to add that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, these dialysis, there's a little bit of gray area as far as like being an actual medical clinic and technically being a business that just has employees in it that does a medical procedure, because there's no actual medical doctor or something of that capacity there. And that's a problem, because when you go in, dialysis is a pretty serious thing, and you're basically doing that for life. And it should also be noted that dialysis clinics are extremely highly profitable. As Professor Brown noted, they had enough money to just throw $100 million almost at this, so they can hire one more person. And as Dr. Sarton noted, part of the yes is it prohibits these places from closing anyway, so they can't go away.
Yeah, well, good. Ooh, I love this educated conversation. Look at, I see y'all in the chat too. Like, okay, thank you. I finally understand these propositions. Right. Imagine if there was advertisements on TV like this, but they're not going to. They don't want you to understand it, right? Okay, great.
Exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I don't understand some of these advertisement. Like, what is the meaning?
Right.
Sometimes they purposely do it backwards. Like California originally had a proposition on marriage equality that was brought forward by essentially people who don't believe in marriage equality, and they said, say yes if you don't believe in marriage equality, and every bunch of people were confused, and they said yes because they believed in marriage equality, but that was a vote for no.
Yeah, Proposition 8. I was in college when that happened.
Yeah, that was my first time going, oh, these sneaky. Okay, let's see how it is.
Oh yes, they'll word it really interestingly so that you have to read it a couple of times before you're like, okay, what do I actually believe? Good. Okay, let me see. I think we got, was it one more proposition?
2 more, 30 and 31.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, you're sure. All right. I forgot the tobacco. We can't forget the tobacco products. Okay.
No, we can't.
Do you want to read this one, Wonka?
Yeah, so for Prop 30, this would be a tax on millionaires. So people who make over $2 million a year, they would get a 1.75% income tax, and that money would be used towards funding zero emission vehicle rebates. So if you want to buy a vehicle with zero emissions, you could get a rebate. It would also help with charging station infrastructure. And as many of you know, living in California, we've been getting a lot of fires throughout the region. And so this would also provide more funding for firefighter training and hiring. So this is kind of one of those like more environmentally kind of centered propositions. Some things to note that might be a little bit surprising. Governor Newsom, he's not for this particular prop. I don't think he put any money towards opposing it, but some of the reasoning that he gave was that given that there's already high gas prices right now, kind of inflation, he thinks that kind of raising taxes on, I guess, people making over 2 million might not be best for the economy at the current moment. And so, yeah, just some things to kind of think about and consider.
Yeah, I'll add, I think the LA Times opposed this. I think they encouraged people to vote no, but their rationale was that they didn't really trust the funding sources. As you can see down here, the folks who kind of want this, Lyft is on there for some reason, you know. It's almost like some of these companies who maybe they should be paying for the infrastructure for these zero emission vehicles. They don't want to pay for it. So they may be coming to the voters saying, hey, voters, let's make the rich people pay for it so we don't have to pay for it. So while it may sound enticing to say, yeah, tax the rich, you know, I guess maybe it's also a good thing to think about when is the right time to tax the rich, you know, what should we tax them for? And is this one of the reasons we should tax the rich people? Or maybe we should, and that might be why the Teachers Association is voting against or paying money to oppose this prop, because they may think, hey, we need money in education. We'd rather tax the rich and wait to tax them for education purposes and not for vehicles. Vehicle rebates and charging stations. So again, some of these things are very nuanced, right? Two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you just have to think about, okay, is this a good reason to tax the rich people for these kind of things, or not right now? That'd be the decision that you'd make there. Yeah.
That's good.
All right.
Next one.
Yeah, we can move on to the next one.
Last one.
Okay, this is Prop 31. So right now there is a ban on flavored tobacco products in California. Maybe I'm going too far back in the past, but when all of these vapes and things started to happen, a lot of the young people were hit very hard, you know, just like we're seeing the fentanyl craze happening right now. We had the flavored tobacco vaping craze, and California made some moves to try to ban these products to not lure children towards them. But now we see that there's this effort to strike down the current ban that allows the sale of these flavored tobacco products. And you can see who's financially supporting the no here is a lot of the tobacco companies, versus we see the teacher associations, the American Cancer Society, the Kaiser Foundation. Michael Bloomberg, interestingly enough, who used to be the mayor of New York City, he ran for president in 2016. And he is very rich, very wealthy. He puts a lot of money into kind of progressive causes. And so he's backing a yes to uphold the current state ban on flavored tobacco products. So, but you might say, I want some. Was it 2020 when he ran? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, child, I don't know what year it is.
15 kabillion people. Yeah.
I was like, I remember that year when a whole bunch of people ran, but I couldn't remember. Okay, 2020.
He spent over $1 billion, you know, just to leave the race in like a couple months.
I was gonna say, y'all remember that? He flooded the airwaves.
Oh my God.
You could not get away from a Michael Bloomberg ad.
So yeah, remember, you know, tax the rich.
So long ago.
So Michael Bloomberg, who ran for president 2020, does not want you having flavored tobacco products. So, so I don't know. But that's what 31 is saying. All right.
Yeah, I think that wraps up all of our props. Any burning questions before we kind of move on to some of our local measures and bonds within the SoCal area? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Charlie, did you want to talk about a bit bonds and measures or anything on that? I think
I wasn't sure if Dennis was back, but yeah, we're gonna move into talking about some local measures, which someone once said all politics is local. And it is true that the things happening right outside of your door in your very neighborhood, they don't get a lot of national news coverage sometimes. We don't talk about some of these local positions that people run for and acquire, but they can be just as important or more important. City council races, local measures, right? Folks on city councils decide if your trash gets picked up outside of your house. They decide if the street lights get changed, who's paving the roads and the streets and making sure that they get the potholes are taken out. Some of those local things that we deal with on a daily basis, we can vote on as well. And so there are some local measures that are kind of like propositions, but they're just on the local scale. So just like California can have some propositions, we can also have some LA County measures that are like propositions that allow you as a voter to chime in. And we're going to see also that some local cities, some local school districts also like to take out loans. I'll call them that just because it's an easier concept to understand. But they like sometimes to take out a loan and get some money to do things, and they'll pay it back. But they have to ask permission from the voters if they want to do stuff like that. A bond is the fancy way to describe a bond measure. So you'll notice that you may see a couple of those on your ballot where the school districts are asking for some more money. But okay, let's jump into Measure A. I think GianCarlo is going to talk about that one.
Yes, so Measure A talks about the sheriff's office. So I'm going to kind of explain a little bit the sheriff department and how that is different from the LAPD for those who may not be familiar. So the LAPD focuses on LA City, that is managed by technically the mayor of LA, and they'll put somebody in charge of the Los Angeles Police Department. Now, the sheriff's department really has jurisdiction over all of LA County, and they operate in unincorporated sections of LA and different LA cities for whichever cities want to kind of hire them to kind of patrol their region. Even if they're not technically hired by a city within LA County, they could still have jurisdiction over there. So Measure A, what that does is it will give the LA County Board of Supervisors the power to remove a sheriff from office by a four-fifths vote. So right now, the sheriff, I believe, has a 4-year term. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And that we as the voters vote them into office. And so they really could only be removed by another election or if they decide to resign. But this kind of gives the LA County Board of Supervisors a little bit more power over their position in case the sheriff, has maybe scandals or is not liked or received well by the public through their work. So that's kind of what this measure will kind of shift a bit on that.
And I was going to ask Dennis, do you want to give some background on why this ended up on our ballots this year?
Well, it's pretty simple. The current sheriff is a lightning rod for either support or criticism. But when it comes to the political class, like elites of the county, including elected officials like the district attorney and of course the board of supervisors and others, he hasn't done much to score points with them and get on and be on their good side. Getting elected wasn't enough to do that. And then the LA County Sheriff's Department for decades and decades has been rife with scandal and some of the worst kind, not just corruption, but the violence in the county jail system, violence committed by sheriff's deputies, et cetera. And Villanueva hasn't done anything, some people would argue, to try to correct any of those. If anything, he's implicit and complicit in much of the trouble and problems that plague the sheriff's department. Yet he has a platform because he's elected. And so he's become a thorn, to say it nicely, he's become a thorn in the side to people on the county board of supervisors. He's basically taken it upon himself to point out to everybody that will listen how they don't tell him what to do, how he does not work for them. And when you consider that crime in the county is the issue that it is for everybody, the fact that we have such a polarized, conflict-oriented relationship between the board of supervisors and the sheriff should be problematic, period. Now, how you resolve that, that's what this is, offering an alternative for the county to be able to resolve that. So I have for the sake of transparency, I'm actually working with people from the campaign for Robert Luna, who is the former police chief of Long Beach, who is running against Villanueva. So I just want to make sure that you all know that, and that I've met him and I've been helping him with some volunteers. So, but there you go. But I'm also really good friends with Hilda Solis, who's a county board of supervisor. So my toe is kind of wet in a couple of different ways in this particular issue.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, no. So if you decide yes, that means that you want your board of supervisor to be able to have a little more influence in who the sheriff is and pull them just in case they're doing something that may be unethical. If you vote no, it means you may believe that no, the voters should vote for this person. And even if there maybe are some scandals or anything like that, we'll just vote them out next time. Like leave them in there until we have our say. So yeah, that's what that one essentially is saying. So good. All right, I guess we'll move to the next one. And I'll talk about this one a little, Measure C. So marijuana. So this would increase taxes on marijuana businesses or add a tax in the unincorporated areas of LA County. So, for those of you who, maybe a little younger, there are 88 cities in LA County. LA is just one of the 88 cities. There's 10 million people that live in LA County. And so it's very large. But there are some places in our county that aren't technically covered in a jurisdiction of a city. They're kind of cityless. So those places we call unincorporated areas, and the people who lead those areas are the LA County Board of Supervisors. So the county essentially oversees what happens in those unincorporated areas. And so right now they don't believe they have a tax on some of those, or maybe it's lower. So this proposition is just saying that those marijuana businesses that are operating in those unincorporated areas of LA County are going to be taxed. And they're expecting that's going to break in $10 million annually in revenue for the LA County General Fund. So if you want those taxes to be imposed on these businesses, you'd vote yes, and no would mean there's no additional taxes added to those businesses. So is that right? Did I characterize that correctly?
Yeah, and I think one thing that I'll add in terms of like marijuana businesses, it's not just those who sell, but also those who are growing. So kind of like taxing on like different levels of the marijuana industry within those spaces.
Well, one of the things that happened though, when as the marijuana industry began to basically explode in California, a lot of cities throughout the state ended up passing measures on their own in their cities to basically prohibit the business licensing of marijuana businesses, for whatever reasons, like Cerritos is one of those. And what that ended up doing was basically leaving the unincorporated areas like as a quote unquote no person's land, like a free land battleground, where they would be able to operate with much more freedom and less regulation. And because they were basically like the tube of toothpaste, they were being squeezed out of local cities and ended up finding in unincorporated areas much friendlier county regulations in place. So now the county is figuring out they need to tighten that up a little bit. And this is one of the first things that they're doing.
And I know it's been profitable for some cities locally that decided to allow the businesses to continue. I live in Lakewood, so there's no businesses there, but Bellflower does, others in Long Beach. So
White Sun Cherry, that's where I go.
I'm not gonna ask folks in the Zoom to tell me where you get your stuff, but
that could be a separate link if people want to share the connection. Some new member discounts.
Oh gosh. Okay, good. Let's see.
All right. Should we go to the next one?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was like, there's one more measure, right? Okay.
There's two more, yeah.
Okay. So this one's real close to home. So for those of you who are students here, most of you live in the district. So you might see this on your ballot, but Measure CC, this is going to authorize Cerritos College to sell bonds for infrastructure maintenance and job training. So it's kind of the concept I mentioned just a second ago, where they're essentially like, we're going to kind of take out this loan for $425 million. And it's going to give us an annual amount of money every year that we can use to build buildings. Looks like here that they're mentioning job training. And so it would be $19 million annually. Just for a point, I guess, and Dennis can maybe mention more. We have had bonds in the past. I believe we're still paying off one of them, or is it two of them?
Oh, more like they've spent it down pretty much, but it's going to be paid back over a relatively long period of time. So
yeah,
these are long-term debts.
Yeah.
And even then, don't forget, these are long-term debts that are being basically satisfied by property owners and business owners in the district, not the school. I mean, the school's not paying these back, right? Local voters are. Property owners are paying this back.
Yeah.
So we get to spend it, but we don't pay it back.
So if you, for those of you who
if you don't live in the district,
right. For those of you who have parents who lived in the district and own homes, they would definitely probably feel some type of way about this one, because it's going to add to how much they have to pay. So
yeah, and if you think about it, we're kind of like we do have a dog in this fight. Anybody that's been here for any amount of time, the college has gone through a physical transformation, which is basically all the infrastructure for the college, like in terms of businesses and classroom space. And the college, I can't even guess, but even the new Performing Arts Center is absolutely gorgeous. And if you weren't here when we had the old one, the theater, it's hard for you to actually wrap your head around it. But the bond money that paid for that new Performing Arts Center, I'm sorry, but I'm a captive audience here. Every dollar that they spent is going to be worth it, and it's going to be brought back to us and to this community for years and years and years to come. It's going to put Cerritos College on the map as having one of the most beautiful, wonderful, up-to-date, state-of-the-art performing arts centers in the region. I mean, so the value added to Cerritos College for generation now, I think is worth it. But right, I'm not a property owner in the district, so it's easy for me to say that.
I'll point out that the only way public schools get funding in California is through property taxes.
Mhm.
And most of us at some point went to public school. If not right now, Cerritos is a public school, so we're going right now. So we do benefit from property taxes, even though our parents might complain.
Yeah, so it's, money's spent, you hope it's money spent well on these structures and these buildings, because as Professor Falcon said, it can add value to whatever college or school district gets the money. So, and most of the time they have
Yeah,
an oversight board as well. So there are some folks who are supposed to check in and make sure that the money's being used how they said they would use it. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Juanco.
yeah, no, I was just gonna add, I'm noticing in the chat, some people are asking about AC. And so within like on the campus, I'd be interested to hear if any of you know if this would actually help either fix or create like air conditioning in some of the buildings. Because it seems like even just some of the people in the chat could be personally affected by this if they vote yes.
Oh, probably not. That's a short answer. Probably not. But you can find out specifically what the district is saying that it is going to, if it gets the money, what it's going to go towards. And I don't think, from anything I've heard, I don't think any of it goes towards something that would be considered part of the regular budget process for the school. And I would think that the upkeep and maintenance of things like air conditioning in existing buildings is already factored into the budget for the college. I don't see them throwing new money at that, but I don't know for sure, but there are ways to find out. I mean, you could contact the district and you could look at, let's say, like Felipe, what's his last name? But there are people that you can contact on the campus to find out what the plan is for this particular bond. I just haven't looked at it.
Yeah, I just put this really long link in the chat. But this actually takes you to Cerritos College's website, and it looks like they do actually have the wording. So if enacted, Measure CC can address educational priorities identified by residents in community surveys. Okay. So it's kind of vague language. They're saying that they'll prepare students to transfer. Okay. It says provide safe drinking water, which makes me concerned about what I just got out of this water fountain. What did I just drink? Repairing deteriorating gas, electrical sewer lines, fixing leaky roofs, and improving student safety, which is another kind of vague statement. So looks like they really are trying to do some like upkeep with this money. Really some maintenance stuff, but as well as maybe use it to help students, which is kind of vague. So that could mean a lot of things, I suppose.
They can't spend it on instruction.
Yeah, no.
They can't. I mean, so,
the infrastructure.
AC helps students.
After that, but they, what I mean? They can't spend
after
it on
the heat wave. After this last heat wave, like, no. Y'all need to get these kids some AC.
Sam, I see your hand.
I think from what I heard from ASCC when they were talking about Measure CC, I think the point is there is safe drinking water, but like you said before, it's more of like upkeep just to make sure like nothing breaks or things like that. That's kind of my general idea of it.
Okay, well, that is what Measure CC is. I live technically in Long Beach School District, Long Beach City College's district, so I can't even vote on this. I work here. Okay, I know we're running close on time here. We'll move along here. So this is measure 8. So this is for Downey Unified School.
Measure K, sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The topography has gotten me again.
I got a little creative, y'all. I'm sorry.
I was like, it's a K with a little kick on it. But measure K, this is Downey Unified. So if any of you all live in the Downey Unified School District area, this is a similar concept like Dennis just mentioned. So the property owners in that school district would be essentially paying $504 million, $500 million, and it would give $20 million annually. And looks like it's very similar for infrastructure, maintenance projects, some facility improvements. And so one thing to note, I guess, is that some of these school districts have been around for a while and their buildings are getting a little old and dated. So they do need probably some upkeep and some repair. So I think that's why some of them are requesting this money too. All right.
I mean, if you think about it, and I know we have short on time, but if you think about it, just to me, it begs the question. I mean, just like with a lot of different issues, educational funding in the state of California is primarily and this could be an argument, should be a state responsibility, right? To guarantee an equal education to every child in the state of California, which is guaranteed to them in the state constitution. Yet, because we have so many school districts and this idea of local control through local school boards, what we have now is a situation where you have school districts like Cerritos and Downey and all the other ones who periodically have to go back out to voters in their districts and basically with the hat in the hand because the state isn't funding them to a level where they can actually take care of their facilities without having to go out to local taxpayers. And when you look at different districts and the inequities in terms of race and income, educational level, you can see how problematic that can be, even just in LA County, right? Where you're not gonna have some communities that have the tax base for all kinds of different reasons that end up getting left out in the cold because the state's not funding them adequately. But that's me blowing a horn while I still have a little bit of time left.
No, thank you for that. Going through these measures, like you said, makes us realize where the system may be broken. There needs to be better ways that we fund things. No, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Now, I know we're at 3:31. GianCarlo was mentioning maybe giving you all some resources really quick in case any of you all have to go. So do you want to share those?
Yeah, maybe, Will, if you don't mind going near the end, there is a guides and link slide. And there's also going to be a QR code there. Charlie, do you have the link to the PDF that maybe we could put in the chat in case people aren't able to scan the QR code?
Oof. I can try to pull it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to, or maybe I could just scan it and then figure out how to send it to myself.
We have just a couple more races to go through.
Here we go.
In case folks have to leave, we want to just make sure that you have the resources you need.
So there's a QR code for this entire PowerPoint. On this particular page, we have different guides and links. So on the right, I'll start there. This is the links that I posted earlier in the chat where you could check if you're registered, some early voting locations within your area, local polling places the day of, and more information on the conditional voter registration. If you haven't registered to vote yet, you could still do it basically the day of at a polling place. And to the left, you see a different resources that I use to compile all this information. Everything from POPs, local city measures, voter guides, finding your district, which actually is kind of a pain in the ass. But near the bottom, it says CalMiters, find your district. You can kind of see who your state assembly member and Senate is, and then who your US representative is at the federal level. And where I got all of the Fair Political Practices Commission, that's where I compiled a lot of the campaign finance information for the props. So you can kind of see who else contributed to those props for or against. It looks like Charlie just added the link to the PDF. Thank you for that. Now, are we wanting to kind of continue the presentation, Charlie, or did we want to kind of, what are your kind of feeling with this?
Let me see. Do we have a little more time, Will? Or I know we just had we could move through them real quickly, maybe. That feels okay. I think we just had a couple of the local races.
Yeah, I think we could one, two.
We'll keep maybe our comments brief and just.
There's 8. Yeah, there's 8 panels, but I think some of these we could go through pretty quickly. So the LA City Mayor, yeah, that's the first one.
Okay, so yeah, so you may have heard, I'm sure this is another one where you've seen advertisements for the mayor of LA, Eric Garcetti, who is the current mayor of Los Angeles, is moving on up to India and accepted, gonna soon have an ambassadorship to India, so he'll be leaving, and there's gonna be a new mayor of LA, Karen Bass, longtime Democrat, was in the Senate, the Assembly rather, State Assembly, and then has been a member of the House of Representatives. She's running, as well as Rick Caruso, a businessman, real estate developer. Have you ever been to the Grove before in Los Angeles? That's a Rick Caruso property. And so, yeah.
I didn't know that was her.
That's her, girl. She got money.
No wonder she's over here paying for her whole campaign. I was like,
right. She's like, I can fund this by my lonesome, like my mother would say. So Rick Caruso's running. Rick Caruso used to be a Republican up until fairly recently, but switched his party affiliation and is now a Democrat. And so Karen Bass has been a Democrat for a long time. So of course, she's attacking him as kind of this flip-flopping person that's coming in, and he's attacking her as a career politician, right? That's been around for forever and is going to just keep a lot of the same old going. But yeah, as you can see that they on the slide, they lead several things. They propose an annual budget, but it's really the LA City Council that approves the budget, how the money is spent in LA. So they don't have quite as much power as to prove everything, but they do have a lot of leadership responsibilities. So, all right. Move to the next one. Yeah, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so kind of just to reiterate some of what I was mentioning, Sheriff's Department oversees all of LA County. Here's a bit more numbers. So they manage roughly 9,000 deputies and 7,000 civilian employees. So those employees kind of look like lab technicians and stuff like that, work within the kind of in the criminal justice system. And they are given a 4-year election term with no term limits. They also manage 7 jails within LA County. In terms of the specific candidates, I don't know if we already lost Dennis, if he wants to weigh in on this. But yeah, I could pass it back to you, Charlie, on this.
Okay. Yeah, I know we summarized them a little bit.
Yeah.
Been some scandals with the current LA County sheriff. And so Robert Luna's kind of coming in and opposing him, trying to oust him. And so it's been a heated campaign for sure. That'll be definitely one of the ones to watch on election night, for sure.
And just to be fair, truth be told, I already explained how, for transparency, that I have a connection with Robert Luna, right? But coming from the Long Beach Police Department, where he did, and he served there for quite some time, the Long Beach Police Department itself has been racked. And if you live in Long Beach, you might know some of this history. They were basically under consent decree and being managed by the county for years because of abuses that took place. All the kinds of abuses that you'll find in any large metropolitan police department. The same kind that exists in the sheriff's department. I mean, so both Villanueva and Luna have histories with police agencies that in one way or another, either their predecessors, mentors, and others that they worked with in uniform during their careers, they would have come into contact with these people, these individuals, and how clean their hands are. And this is to both of them, Luna and Villanueva, how clean their hands are. I'm not gonna, put any money on either one in that regard, but we don't get that choice. Right now, the choice is between Luna and Villanueva, regardless of their histories. So good luck. Good luck with this one.
Like my mother said, sometimes you hold your nose and you vote for somebody, and just pray it works out. So, okay, we can move to the next one. Okay, and then I know, GianCarlo, you had a little something you were going to mention about these but may go under the radar sometimes, these smaller kind of court judges, but they do have a lot of influence in our political process.
Yeah, so this is the LA Superior Court judges. So we have 6 offices that are being voted on. So some things to note on this one is that these judges could oversee things as simple as traffic disputes, anything also from child custody and some high profile cases. So just to name a few, a Superior Court judge oversaw the O.J. Simpson trial, the Britney Spears conservatorship, some of these more pop culture cases. And so these judges have a lot of power. And so something interesting to note on some of the people who are running here, now I didn't give too much of their description or bio, but some of them, I think like 3 or 4 out of them who are running have a public defender position. And so they have history as a public defender, which is not common for the judges that have historically been in this position. I think if one of them wins, that would be the first time a public defender has become a judge. Somebody could correct me on that. Within LA counties, or yeah, just specific to this region. So the reason why I bring that up is because it can help shape a bit more perspective and offer different kind of experiences on ruling when you have a history of usually defending people who are on the other side of the law, if you will. So yeah, just some things that I wanted to note on that. And those links at the end that we'll kind of end on have a lot of information on those and kind of will tell you who does what and all of that. But yeah.
Right, kind of like Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court having a public defender background and that being different from the typical thing. Okay. All right, next slide.
Yeah.
The water agencies.
All right. I'll try my best.
I'll say we might need Dennis's help for this one. Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to hop in, please. So water agencies. So the California landscape with water agencies, there are hundreds of different types of agencies that work throughout California. They could be publicly owned, managed, or privately managed. Sometimes some agencies will provide water for millions of people and sometimes just for a few thousand. So the one that is currently within like the Long Beach area, kind of like where your school is located, is predominantly given or provided water by the Water Replenishment District, WRD, of SoCal. So right now, Division 3 is the one that kind of falls within the Cerritos, Long Beach area. And some things to consider on that is water agencies, depending on how they run, can have the power to set the water rates, water quality. They could have long-term planning on how to kind of save water, especially with droughts within California. They can mandate water use. So, you know, there's some cities that would say you can't use your sprinklers on certain days of the week. They could also offer rebates on like lawn replacement and things like that. So this particular region services, I believe, 4 million people. And yeah, I don't know what more to say on that. I will be honest is that I'm not too knowledgeable on water agencies, but I think as we're all kind of seeing and experiencing the changes of climate and how water is being really becoming more scarce within California, I think it'd be important to become more knowledgeable at how the people who are managing water are managing that water. So that's kind of just some of my thoughts on that. And this particular district's website will be at the end as well, and those resources if you want to learn more about them. And some of the voter guides will give a little bit information on them, but it's a little bit more sparse, if you will.
Okay, well, we can move on then. Good. And we got some state level races, which these may be ones that you again have heard more about, but you will have to most likely vote for an assembly person. So remember, California's legislature, very similar to how it works in Washington, D.C. We've got two houses, a bicameral is the fancy word. Ooh, Dennis, I'm pulling out all my undergrad political science stuff today.
Good job. Yeah, good
I'm
job.
trying to remember all of that. I graduated cum laude now, but but yeah, there's a bicameral legislative system where we have an assembly and then we have a state senate. So you may notice that you have to vote for some state senators, you have to vote from state assembly folks. So just think of it as you would like the Congress of our state. And so we just put up some of the local races that are happening in our kind of 562, Cerritos College District area.
Yeah, and there is a Cerritos College connection to this particular race. Blanca Pacheco is, I believe, the daughter of Mariana Pacheco on our board of trustees. If I'm not wrong, I might be mixed, but I'm pretty sure. But I know they're related. So
yeah, this is her daughter.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So she's been a Downey mayor, a Downey city councilwoman. So she's running in the 64th district.
And I was going to say that before we move on completely, like the water replenishment board election, just as a like FYI, it is probably just as useful just to look up the names of the people running to learn a little bit more, because those seats tend to be considered by many stepping stone elections, so that people who want to run for office and want to get into that realm, but for whatever reason can't run for an assembly seat because it's already basically spoken for, because there's an incumbent or somebody that's wired in. Same thing with Senate seats, same thing with Board of Trustee seats, school board races, city council seats. They always want to get their toe in somewhere. And so it's always a good idea to keep an eye on some of these folks, because you're going to end up seeing them somewhere else down the line. So like just to look for quote unquote rising stars in the political firmament, you check out some of these people and what their backgrounds and their bona fides are, because we'll probably see them again somewhere else.
Very good point.
That's helpful to know. Thank you, Dennis.
Before I taught journalism, I was a local journalist that covered a lot of these types of races, and definitely even in talking to these candidates, a lot of them did have ambitions for higher office. So they knew that they were kind of working their way up through some of these positions. So, all right, good. I think we have maybe, some Supreme Court judges. Is there anything to add, GianCarlo, from this is the statewide instead of LA, right?
Yeah, so this is statewide. And so these votes are retention votes. So you would vote yes to keep them in office, or no to have them removed. So they're not running up against anyone. And yeah, I mean, just for the sake of time, I won't go into the specifics of anyone, but these are kind of highlighting some of the ones on the ballot this year.
Okay, great. And then I
think we have two more at the federal level, and then we are done.
Okay, so yeah, this is the U.S. Congress. So they redistrict recently, did some redistricting. So some of these have shifted around. So you may even notice on your ballot that you may be a different person than who you had last time, or the districts changed names a little bit. But this is we put some of the ones on here that were actually in our area. So Cerritos College falls in Linda Sanchez's district. And so she's running again. I'm not sure how many terms she's been in Congress, Dennis. It's been a minute.
I don't remember either, but I worked on her campaign, and students from my classes volunteered for her very first campaign.
Wow.
So I've known her for a really, really long time.
Yeah. So, and comes kind of from a family, a little bit of a dynasty. Her sister was
Loretta. Yeah. Loretta was a trailblazer, glass ceiling destroyer in Congress in Orange County. So I knew Loretta too. I don't even know what happened to Loretta though. I've lost touch with her. So
yeah, because she had ran for higher office, I remember, and then didn't quite make it. And but yeah, so this is a local race, covers a lot of our local cities here, and so there is a Republican running against her, a local mayor. And so you could definitely check out both of their websites, see what their platforms are and what they stand for. And then I think we had maybe one more another local race. So there's been some redistricting. So parts of Cerritos and Artesia have been brought into kind of the North Orange County District 45. So this was traditionally like the Northern Orange County, like Fullerton area, Brea, kind of all of that area. But it does encompass some of our region too now. And
now I don't know if any of you guys have seen these commercials, but these are some of the nastiest,
very bad,
and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of nasty out there. But these are some of the nastiest that if you attached a truth-seeking missile to, they would be obliterated because of all the lies and misinformation. Oh my God, I can't help it. But the Michelle Steele ones that are saying that communist propaganda is being introduced to our local schools, I'm like, God, who's fact checking any of this before it goes out? Because, and I'm done, because no, these commercials, they hit a nude low among the low this election cycle. It's horrible. Oh.
No, yeah. I for some reason, whenever I'm at Planet Fitness is when I see these commercials. I'm on the treadmill, I'm trying to run, and I'm like, what are they like? Michelle Steele, evil, and it's like, whoa, like, God, like I feel scared about her. I don't even know.
Yeah, you see, I was at the gym the other night. I saw the commercial. I started looking around for communists. They were everywhere.
Yeah, so this is, and it makes sense because this is one of those districts that, you know, could be very influential in determining some of the power in Congress. And it's one of those like almost very purple districts. So it's kind of 50-50-ish, and it kind of swings back and forth from Democrat to Republican. So both sides are very eager. They're putting a lot of money into that race. Yeah. All right, let me see. Do we have one more, or is that it? Or...
No, I think that's it. We go back to our resources page and our links.
Okay, so yeah, so those of you, like I said, I did drop earlier a link to this whole presentation. Here's the QR code again. So if you want to scan that, just so you can have this on your phone, and you can go back and check a lot of these resources here, find your polling place, all of that. If you need a conditional ballot for some reason, provisional ballot, you can find that out too. So you just want to make sure you all vote. Hopefully this helped you all with understanding the propositions and some of these categories that you'll see on your ballot. I do want to thank, you know, everyone who came, and GianCarlo. I do want to drop his information too in the chat, his Instagram. As you can see, he's an amazing designer and does a lot of great work. And so please follow him and inquire if you ever need anything. But then also thank you to Professor Falcon for being here, adding some context, some history, and some knowledge about all of these topics. I know it's been very helpful for all of our students who are here.
All right, bye, sweetie. See you later.
First time voters. So yeah, so good luck, everybody. We did record this. So if for those who missed things and all of that, or if you want to revisit some of these conversations, we'll make sure to get this posted up. Will it be on the
And
website?
just like as a final word from my end, of course, these are always valuable. I mean, it's just no, whether or not it helped anybody decide how they're going to vote or not, that's a separate issue. But the political science department is looking to reboot the political science club. And once we get that going, we'll obviously reach out to all the other clubs and groups on campus that are doing similar work, so we get some good cross-pollination and people working together and collaborating. And it's going to be one of those things where I'm going to emphasize actually getting students the opportunity to work with local elected officials and candidates when we're doing election cycles, because there's nothing more valuable. Because when are you going to meet Gavin Newsom? When are you going to meet Joe Biden? When are you going to meet even a member of Congress? But you would be surprised at how available local elected officials, city council, school board members, some assembly members, and the experience that you can get from just meeting them, maybe working on a campaign, doing some work in their offices, working with constituents, will completely reset your compass when it comes to politics. So as nasty as I can be about politicians, how do you know they're lying? Their lips are moving. Politicians are like diapers, they're full of shit, and you need to change them often. But some of my best friends are politicians. So it's not easy. I mean, there are no easy answers to any of this, but sticking your head in the sand isn't an option. I mean, not to educated people. So that'll be my last quip for the day. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Power corrupts. When absolute
There
power
you go.
corrupts, absolutely.
There you go.
So we may not want these people in office for forever.
You did take that class. Look at you.
I told you I had to go back. I had to go back. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll wrap it up here, but make sure you go vote, and we'll see you at the polls. We'll see you at the polls.
Yeah.